Right, I'm just going to tie a very, very straightforward rig. I love float fishing. Float ledgered dead baits. Probably this rig's the most versatile one. I use it on rivers. I use it on still waters. I use it for all my boat fishing. It's just an up trace basically with a lead attachment. The lead can free itself if it needs to do it. Doesn't tangle, and it's very, very, very easy to make. Now, when I started using this rig, I used to use single strand titanium, which is fantastic stuff. It's very expensive, a lot more aggravation to make, and I've had some cracking fish on it, but it let me down. Not straight away. We're talking, I started using titanium when it wasn't even available in the UK. I was getting it from America when you were getting $2 to a pound. That give you an idea. Now, it's gone without warning. I can't tolerate that. It's only gone a couple of times on me, but that's once too many. Now, lots of people will swear by titanium, single strand titanium. Someone told me that there's a reaction between the crimp and the wire. Now that reaction, these traces were going to be indestructible. They last you ages. It could have taken a long time to happen, but I wasn't prepared to take that risk again. So this is for an up trace, not a bait trace, not for a bite leader. So I'm using fluorocarbon. Now, I wouldn't use fluorocarbon as a bite leader with a treble hook. Fluorocarbon doesn't kill fish. Treble hooks do. But pike, in a worst case scenario, could bite through a fluorocarbon leader. It would be very, very rare. On an up trace, I don't think it's ever going to happen to you, to be quite honest. A lot of people use heavy mono, which will be absolutely fine. But the fluorocarbon, you have got the fact that it's actually invisible. Now, a pike's eyes are on top of its head. It's not going to see your trace, which should always be wire. But if you've got an up trace going up in front of you, or even if that were braid or titanium, there's a chance it could actually see that. With the fluorocarbon, I'm not saying it can't see it, but yeah, it won't do any harm. Anyway, let's get on and make it. Now this can really be made in seconds. The length, I've got two types of fluorocarbon here. Now, all fluorocarbon comes from the same factory, Seagull factory. I think it does anyway. I've got some Savage Gear stuff here. Any fluorocarbon will do. The diameter is the key. Now, don't even contemplate losing less than 0.6. 0.81 if you really wanted to be safe. £73 that is. The 0.6 is £48. Now, this is an up trace. I'm going to go, if I'm using live baits, my helicopter up trace, I will use the thicker one. I want it to be a bit more rigid. With this up trace, I'm going to go for something a bit thinner, 60mm. Now, it just makes for a better knot base. Material, I am going to use about 2 foot. Now, this stuff is really cheap. It's not like titanium or something. So, you're better off going longer. It doesn't do you any harm. Alright. Now, this will become apparent why I'm doing it like this in a minute. I've got some swivels. Let's get the swivels off the internet. I've got my mixture of swivels here. All sorts of sizes in there. I try and Gardener tackle, I swear by that, but these may have come from Bank tackle or something like that. I don't know. As for a knot, now this trace is going to last you a very long time. Make sure that knot is really good. I would always go for a grinner. If you've got a lighter, you could blob the end of this. It wouldn't do you any harm. Do a grinner. Probably 4 turns will be enough. 1, 2, 3. Now this is why I've gone for something a bit thinner, because this would be one hell of a knot if you were using the heavier stuff. No pike, or is it ever going to break that? Now let's snug that knot down. Usually I should wet it. Now really, you really want to give that a pull. Now I do this with a pair of pliers. Pull it both ways. That is not going to go. Could blob that if you wanted to. I'm just going to cut mine off because I haven't got a lighter to hand. Grinners don't slip. Right, now you're going to see why I've got the larger swivel on there. I'm going to use a tadpole bead. Just get these on the internet. Tadpole beads, they're a carp fishing thing. It's supposedly you can free your lead without you don't want to be losing your leads when you're pike fishing, because you don't need to shed a lead. And I'm only using like an ounce and a half. And the worst case scenario, if it got caught in a tree or something, you can always, your lead's going to come off there and it'll come off over the end. Anyway. Pull that down. And that just sits in there nicely. Now, swivel at the other end. Well, I don't think it'll make any difference, but I'm a bit of a tart. I like one a bit smaller. Just a bit neater. Same knot again. You could get away with a blood knot because this knot, but you want to make sure it doesn't slip. If you were to use a blood knot, and if you wanted to use the thicker material, I'd suggest a blood knot. But one thing I'd say, always insist on blobbing that down, because a blood knot with a lighter, a blood knot could slip. Right, I'm going to go round 4 times. This time I'll wet it down. Really take your time on these knots. I kind of just messed up on a knot there, I'd say. Yes, that will never let you down. I've never heard of a pike. I mean, you know, this is an up trace. I've never heard of a. Actually, no, I lie. Neville Fickling got bitten off on a factory bought up trace, so he told me. So it could happen, but after you catch a fish, it doesn't hurt just to run your hand down that. Just check it, see if there is any nicks. I mean, I've used fluorocarbon. I've got some stuff I got from America for a bite leader for pike. I'm using a barbless single hook. Now, when you take the pressure off that hook, the hook falls out. Don't even think about using it with a treble. I wouldn't use it with a lure with a treble. But I've had enough fish over 5 years of using it as a bite leader for fly to know that the chances of it being bitten through are very, very slim. Chances of it being bitten through on an up trace, not going to say it's not going to happen, but I don't think it'll happen in my lifetime. Now, I've just put the actual the run ring, another one I get off the internet. These are the same run rings I use for my running ledger. I don't want a running ledger. I don't see the point of it when I'm float fishing. Just pull that down and it just fits over there. Just clip your lead onto there. You're not going to lose your lead. Job's a good one. If you need any of these bits, the floats or anything, if you want to use the titanium, Eddie Turner, my debt to Eddie Turner is bigger than that, the national debt of Mexico. So he sells also all the bits you need, all the different types of wires and that. I don't know if I mentioned earlier, single strand wire, the marlin that I use for my bait traces, I would not use this for an up trace. 2 reasons. I heard a rumour of well, it wasn't a rumour, I know a very good pike angler who caught a very large fish which was pretty much decapitated. Wire like this is like cheese wire, so if you are insistent on using wire, I go down the single strand route. Titanium, like £40, or if you want normal wire, I know Eddie Turner sells some bleeding leader, which I've heard really great things about. One of the things I think you do need, a lot of people don't use up traces. I'll always use an up trace. You will get bitten off if you don't. I don't think you'll ever be bitten off on a fluorocarbon up trace if it's thick enough. But one thing I actually do a couple of times, I've actually years ago I was fishing a very strange water in Kent and I had a run. I was fishing out a bit too far, too close to a bush. Next thing I know, the fish has gone straight into the bush. It was October. I don't recommend doing this when it's a bit colder, but I knew the fish would be over 20 pounds from the water I was fishing, so I stripped off. I went in. I didn't really want to walk along the margin. It was very deep because of the hypodermic syringes in glass. This was Kent. So I swam out. I got to the bush where I could see the pike in the bush, and it was definitely over 20 pounds. In fact, I think it was 21 pounds the first time I caught it. Couldn't get the landing net in there, so I reached in. I was using titanium at the time. I grabbed hold of my up trace, wrapped my hand around it like that, and I pulled it out on top of a waiting landing net, and then I swam back. Now, that might sound like a bit of a tall story, but I've got a photograph. The only reason I'm wearing a t-shirt in that photograph is because I don't want to I don't want to get all the women up excited about it. But the good news on that, I caught that fish a year later, 2 or 3 pounds heavier. So it's worth taking your time to get things like that. You don't want to be leaving traces. Don't consider, personally, I wouldn't consider using a rig without an up trace, especially on a float ledger, because you will be bitten off. I've been bitten off on a running ledger at the back end of the year when the fish are swimming around, and now I actually use an up trace doing that. But I know float ledger, paternoster, yeah, that's live bait paternoster is the nastiest one for being bitten off. You always, I wouldn't even use 0.6 fluorocarbon. I still might use titanium, but I've been experimenting with a thicker fluorocarbon on the helicopter rig for quite a while, and it's looking pretty good these days. Anyway, I hope some of what I've said is quite wise. I think I might have mentioned about the PAC region where I picked up a lot of these, like the floats and that I use. Eddie Turner used to do used to have a little stand there selling bits, and that was absolutely invaluable to me. And like some of the talks at the PAC, I looked at him, listened to talks he was giving about fishing tidal rivers, which has put me in so much good stead over the years. It's well worth considering joining the PAC for the money. The magazine is worth that on its own, and if you've got a region near you that's an active region, that's absolutely brilliant. And yeah, you might meet some friends there. Anyway, cheers.